Good afternoon. We are with our shields on so we don't have to be socially distanced. But this afternoon I am in the All-In Credit Union Culinary Arts Center at Vivian B. Adams School with my good friend and often co-conspirator, Yvonne Davis. Yvonne and I worked together for many, many years in the Family and Consumer Science Department at Headland High School. And today we are conspiring on a special project we wanted to share with everyone. Whenever you think about the vegetables that we have and we grow in the South during the fall, generally, Yvonne, what do you think of?
Turnips, collards. Those
Maybe
types of
some
things.
cabbage.
Cabbage, as it gets cooler, yeah.
That's right, that's about it. But you know, times change and things have changed. And here at Adams School, because we also have a partnership with WRC&D, we've been able to grow some fall greens that maybe we're not also accustomed to here in our tunnel houses. And I wanted to take a minute and show you some of the greens that we have grown before our harvest. I'm bad to think to show them after the harvest. But what you're seeing are some greens that we're going to share just a couple of thoughts about with you today. Our raised bed is growing some kale, and so we had some red romaine lettuce, and we had some radishes. And the most unusual thing we had in that bed is some celery. And if anyone ever told you we could not grow celery here, they are wrong. We've grown some delicious celery. It has a really good deep flavor. And we also, in our tunnel houses, have been growing a lot of collards and a lot of kale. In our tunnel house, we have set up a growing program that we are sharing with the city of Ozark. And so we are able to help them through their nutrition hub get some fresh vegetables out to the people in our community. So what I thought I'd do today is talk a little bit about how to prepare some things that maybe we're really not used to, and maybe a new way to prepare an old favorite. So we're going to start out today, and I'm going to start by telling a story on my friend Yvonne here, who has always been very health conscious. She is the one who has done all of the things that you're supposed to do in guiding your nutrition. And the first thing she's going to do before we go any further is give a little disclaimer before I tell the story on her about if you have a health condition, because we are not doctors.
We are not making any medical recommendations. If you have health concerns or perhaps take some prescription medicines that would cause you to have some questions about things, always check with your doctor or a registered dietitian before you apply any kind of health ideas to your own lifestyle. We just need to be really careful about that kind of thing. We tend to kind of jump on the bandwagon sometimes, and we just want to remind you to always check with your medical professionals.
Well, we're going to talk today about a conversation I had with Yvonne back earlier in the fall. We were talking about kale. And she said, I don't like kale. I've tried kale chips, I've tried kale salad, I've tried to steam kale. I do not like kale. In fact, I'm going to tell you what she said. I think kale is food for a goat because I cannot eat it. And I said, Yvonne, I got a recipe I want you to try. And she said, only because you have recommended it, I will try it. So I'm going to share that same recipe with you because I think it did it.
Wonderful.
It did it. It made a
wanted
believer.
to like kale, but I just hadn't gotten there yet. So as we had that conversation and she mentioned the kale soup, I was very agreeable to want to try it because I wanted to like kale. I wanted to be healthy. Everybody's eating kale. It's one of the superfoods. And so here we go.
We're going to show you how to make kale sausage soup today. It's very simple, and it's one of those forgiving recipes that none of the ingredients are exact. And if you'll come on over, I'll show you just exactly what we're going to start with. We start out with smoked sausage that we have taken the lengths and just cut them into rounds. If you like a smaller, you can cut those rounds in half. And I've chopped up 1 onion, and I'm going to slide over here and add them to my Dutch oven. And we are going to cook down this sausage and these onions until the onions begin to be translucent. So while my trusty used to didn't be kale eating assistant stirs on that and gets that ready, come over and I'll show you what else goes in and how we're going to prep it. Along with the sausage and the onions, we're going to add somewhere between 1 and 2 diced sweet potatoes. Now we peeled our sweet potatoes, although I know there are some people who don't peel theirs. And then we are going to add some kale, and if you're buying kale in the grocery store, I think it comes in a pound bag. It is not going to take, it probably won't take that whole pound. That, you can adjust that as to what you like. But if you'll come a little closer, I'm going to show you how to prep the kale, even if you buy it in the grocery store. Kale, like collards and every other kind of leaf, has a heavy stem in it, and the stem is tough. So I always strip it down and try to pull as much of that stem out as I can. So I saved a couple so you could see. See, there's your stem. You want the leaf. Now you want to leave a little stem because that's where your fiber is, and fiber is a big plus when it comes to your greens. And what we're going to do with these, I'm going to grab my knife and I'm going to very coarsely chop this kale. And it is, there's nothing exact about this. It's a coarse chop, just enough so you're not snatching up a leaf when you get ready to dip into your soup. And while we're doing our chopping, and while Yvonne is doing her stirring, I assigned her, because she said she did not like kale, my assignment to her was to be able to tell us some of the reasons we need to eat kale. So Yvonne, spotlight's on you.
Okay, well, one of the things that I learned, I used the word earlier about superfoods, and it's not a nutritional term and not a medical term, it's kind of a marketing term, I guess, going on right now, that there are a number of foods that fall on this list because they are so nutrient dense. And that's a word that means for every cup of that food product, it has a lot of nutrients in it. Just, it's really packed in there. Blueberries is a very common one that falls at the top of the list. But I learned that collards and kale are also on that list. So that's a key factor in knowing that the vitamins and the minerals and that form even that antioxidant property that we hear these words tossed around that just help keep us healthy. They contribute to good health when balanced with other foods. So that was the primary thing I learned, that there are the expected vitamins A and vitamin C and calcium, but they just have a lot of good nutrition in there.
And they're also like broccoli and some other vegetables. They're in that cruciferous family.
That's right, cabbage.
And why is it we care about the cruciferous? I think we learned that from our Cancer Society friends.
Well, and it goes back to that antioxidant component. When you put certain nutrients together, you have what they call antioxidants, and that just contributes to better health by keeping you healthy.
All right, see, I'm trying to convince her, and I think I have her almost convinced. Let's step over, we'll take a look at what's going on in our pot. And we're about to, this is so simple and so easy. You want to cook your sausage down until it's nice and brown and you can hear that good sizzle. And you want your onions to begin to take on a little bit of that brown that's in the bottom.
A little bit of a carameling going on with the onions.
And
it smells so good.
It does smell, and it sounds good. And if you have decided you feel like there's a little too much fat that's rendered out of that sausage, you can kind of dip over to the side. We don't have very much, so we are just going to work with what we have here. And what we're going to do, once we've decided that all of that is cooked as much as we need it to, the next thing we're going to do is add our kale. And we're trying to just sweat this kale down. Kale is like a lot of greens. You think you have a lot of it until you begin to cook it down. And once it begins to cook down, you don't have nearly as much as you thought. So if I didn't put an exacting amount here. I will tell you this, that's a pound of sausage, and that was one large onion. But with the kale, what I usually do, and you can use collards for this, I usually fill up my Dutch oven until it is full of my greens. And now we're gonna stir and cook those down, just sweat them down. And it won't take but just a minute. And you will need to continuously stir because we've got it on fairly high heat because we want to get this party started. So as you want to stir so they don't stick and so that you don't burn any of your kale. But you can tell already it's beginning to cook on down. That has gone from just about the Dutch oven full till nearly halfway down. And this is one of those soups that I have made it on top of my range and then put it in my crock pot and let it just cook on low for the rest of the day. It's the one you can prep really quickly early in the morning.
And I'm just going to tell you, we had some, of course, left over, and it was better the next day.
Like
Those
lots of things.
flavors just blended, and it was absolutely delicious.
Now you can look up here and see how that kale has sweated down and cooked down. And now all we're gonna do is add the rest of our ingredients. Are you ready, Miss Yvonne?
Yes, ma'am.
We are adding our diced sweet potatoes. We are adding 2 cans of white beans. These are Great Northern. And be sure you drain those. Our 2 cans of beans. And then we're adding 1 can of diced tomatoes. And we're gonna give that a little stir. And keep your heat up because you wanna get all this stirred and warmed. And then we are going to add a carton of broth, and you can use either beef or chicken broth. And we're going to start with 1 carton. And as I said, this recipe is rather forgiving. Once you make it, you take a look at it when you get that 1 carton in, and if you think it needs a little more, we'll add a little more. And I think, Yvonne, I'm gonna try out this kitchen. We are blessed to have through funding from All In Credit Union. And we took possession of the kitchen about a week before our COVID shutdown. And now that we're back in school and we're socially distanced, we really haven't been able to use it. So Yvonne and we're having fun trying it all out. And this has a setting called Power Boil. So we're about to see, it's on it.
Okay.
Oh, and it's red underneath.
It is very
That's
red.
what Power Boil means. We want to bring this up to a boil. And once we bring it up to a boil, we're going to turn it down to simmer. And just let it simmer maybe 45 minutes to an hour, unless you choose to put it in your crock pot. But once everything in it, particularly the thing you're going to want to check are your sweet potatoes. When your sweet potatoes become soft, then you know that your soup is done. And I can see that it is beginning to bubble. And I do have my lid. And we can put it on. And before we do that, let's take just a minute and let you see. You're going to have a nice hearty soup. And what I find when we eat it at home, we usually eat it with cornbread.
That's what we like. We like fried cornbread, but when I made this, I made just some simple baked cornbread. It was really good.
It's really good like that. And your broth, It gives you a broth that you can soak up with that cornbread. And one of the things that we taught our students for years and years was so many of us, our animals are more well-fed than we are, because we will take that slotted spoon and we will dip out all of the vegetables and eat those. But what we forget is so many of those nutrients are water soluble and they just cook into that broth. So put your cornbread in there and enjoy sopping it in your soup broth. We appreciate the fact that you take a minute and take a look, and we will make this recipe available to anybody who would like to have a copy of it. Once again, we thank All-In Credit Union for this beautiful Culinary Arts Center at Vivian B. Adams School. We thank Wiregrass Resource Conservation and Development Council for their help in our Tunnel House program. And we thank Ozark City and their Recreation Board for being able to be a part of their grant to help at their nutrition hub. Thank you so much.